What is your deepest, darkest secret? Story 1. I live in the only major urban center in a very rural area, surrounded by suburbs, road construction, gravel pits, and so on. Whenever I see heavy equipment that isn't moved or is left unattended, I sneak into the worksite at night, climb into the always unlocked bulldozer, or whatever it is, and lay on the horn in the dead of night before scrambling away. It's been a decade since I started, and I think I've now honked the horn of just about every type of heavy machinery that has one. Story 2. When I was around 7, I went to the grocery store with my mother. While she was checking out, I went over to the gumball machine to see if anyone had left quarters inside or hadn't spun it all the way. One of the machines was broken, and I spun it until my pockets were full of gumballs. When we got in the car, my mother asked what was in my pockets, and I told her nothing. She still doesn't know to this day. She did, however, say, "If one of those machines was broken and you just kept turning it, that's stealing." I sure fooled her. Story 3. Back in the day, I used to go to Walmart and Kmart and wipe the hard drives of every PC on display once every 2 or 3 weeks. I did this for a couple of years. I taught a friend how to format from the C prompt, and he started doing it too. Then he taught someone else. After a while, all the display PCs in the megastores across about 20 counties around us were periodically being formatted and erased. Years later, I was talking to a guy who had worked at Walmart for about 30 years, and he told me how someone used to format all the PCs in the 2 Walmarts he worked at. Those just happened to be in the 2 counties I visited most often. The funny thing was, they actually set up a sting operation to catch the felonious formatter, and some dude was paid overtime to walk the electronics section as a plainclothes customer for about 3 months. He never caught the person, even though I'm pretty sure I was still formatting the drives during that time. Somehow we missed each other, haha. For the record, I was just blowing off steam and thought it was harmless shenanigans. I've never been in any kind of trouble with the law, and I didn't grow up to be a serial killer. But every now and then, when I walk through a PC store, I still get the itch. Story 4. When I was a child, I managed to get a speech therapist fired. I was in speech classes up until high school, but this happened around 3rd or 4th grade. I don't know what her official title was, but she wasn't the speech teacher I normally saw. She was an older woman, probably in her 60s, and I believe she was there to evaluate how well the district's speech therapy program was going. She had me read sentences with the sounds and letters I struggled with. As I did, she mocked me, laughed at me, and even told me I had the weakest tongue she had ever seen. As a child with a speech impediment, I was already self-conscious, but having an adult authority figure belittle me like that made me never want to speak again. After school, my mother noticed I wasn't very talkative. Eventually, I broke down and told her everything. She called the district and threatened legal action. Soon after, we were notified that the woman had been fired. There was even a phone call between my mom and the woman, where she begged my mom for forgiveness so she could keep her job. I suppose none of this is really a secret, just something I don't talk about often. Her own actions led to her termination. Still, I secretly hope I ended that woman's career, as callous as that may sound. You don't mock a child, especially for something they can't control. To do so when your career involves working with children only proves you're unfit for that role. Story 5. Circa 2004, when I was in 1st grade, I was your typical gifted kid, later turned burnout, of course. I absolutely adored my teacher. One day, though, I arrived to find a new face greeting me at the classroom door. It was the first time I'd ever encountered a substitute teacher. This one, in particular, was a mean, nasty woman who reeked of cigarettes. Within the first hour of class, she told me to shut up. I had never been in trouble at school before, and those 2 words broke my little teacher's pet heart. Yes, this was my villain origin story, OP. I immediately decided to plan my escape. At lunch and recess, I grabbed my backpack, jacket, and rain boots and walked straight out the front door. To this day, I still don't know how a 5-year-old managed to walk out the school's main entrance completely unnoticed. Nonetheless, there I was. The world was my oyster. I marched straight home, singing, "I'm going home and nobody can stop me. H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A," to the tune of Old MacDonald, for 4 kilometers. I had done it. I was home free. When I arrived, I saw my babysitter's car in the driveway. Panic set in. I suddenly remembered that my little brother had stayed home sick that day. Terrified of disappointing my babysitter, I had to make a choice. return to the mean lady at school, or face the wrath of a 20-year-old who, in reality, would have just been completely stunned. I chose the former and bolted up the hill in our town, another 4 kilometers, in the pouring rain. Soaking wet, I ran through the side entrance of the school near the playground, put my bag back in my locker, and sprinted into my classroom. The substitute stared at me for a second, and I thought I was done for. After what felt like forever, she just barked at me to change out of my rain boots and put on my indoor shoes. It dawned on me that, although I must have been gone for nearly 2 hours, she hadn't even noticed I'd left. My first jailbreak and my first cover-up story, both successful missions. I never told a soul about my rainy day adventure. If you're out there, chain-smoking substitute teacher, I hope you found a new career path. Story 6. When I was 8, I was with a group of 5 kids, including myself, at a summer camp held in an elementary school. One of them was my bully, but it was one of those situations where you hang out with certain people just to feel accepted. We were wandering the halls when someone discovered a teacher's room filled with candy. Everyone started grabbing handfuls and laughing excitedly about how much they had, myself included. Then we heard a staff member approaching. I was the only one who acted quickly and slipped inside a locker, leaving it just barely cracked open. I knew it wouldn't lock, but it kept me out of sight. The other 4 kids had to give back all their candy and write the teacher a 2-page personal apology for stealing. Meanwhile, I was so unnoticed that I just held my breath inside the locker until everyone was gone. Once the coast was clear, I climbed out with several fistfuls of candy, completely unscathed. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have jumped into a locker. I could have easily gotten stuck if something went wrong. But at the time, it felt like clever thinking. Story 7. Back in 1990, when I was in 4th grade, my mom would give me a daily allowance of $0.25. What she didn't know was that I had a bully, and it wasn't another kid, it was my math teacher. He made the entire class put $0.25 into a jar on his desk every day to support his drinking habit. If you refused, he'd assign you 25 extra math problems on top of the daily work, and the next day you'd have to bring him 50 cents. If you still refused, it doubled again. 50 extra problems, then $1, and so on. After 3 weeks of handing over my allowance, one day I decided not to give him the $0.25 because I wanted to buy candy. As punishment, he made me do the 25 extra math problems and expected me to bring him 50 cents the next day. Since my mom only ever gave me $0.25, I knew I wasn't going to have the money. Terrified of facing his wrath and the 50 extra math problems, I cried and faked being sick. My mom didn't buy the lie and pressed me until I broke down and told her the truth. Instead of confronting the teacher or even the principal, my mom went straight to the superintendent, who assured her they would take immediate action. The very next day, the jar was gone from his desk. With a scowl, he told the class that a student had tattled on his secret Christmas party fund he was supposedly planning for us. Mind you, it was February, and that he had even hired a private investigator to find out which student and parent were responsible. 3 days later, the investigation into his conduct led to his expulsion. He never knew it was me who had exposed his so-called Christmas party fund. Story 8. My parents have been divorced since I was 1. That's important context. When I was about 8 or 9, my little sister and I fought constantly. One day, we pushed my dad and stepmom past their limit and got yelled at for a while. Not long after, we argued again, and in the scuffle she scratched my chest. The next day, when I was getting into the bath, my stepmom noticed the scratch and asked what had happened. Not wanting to get in trouble for fighting with my sister, I lied and said I'd been scratched by a dog at the dog park while visiting my mom a few days earlier. That little lie probably sparked a huge argument between my divorced parents, but it also led to something worse for me. My dad arranged for me to go through a full course of rabies vaccine shots. Only I knew I didn't actually need them. So I sat there, 9 years old, toughing it out through all those injections, some of which went right into my ass cheek. Story 9. I lost my virginity to a stripper when I was 18. A high school friend of mine had cancer, and we were all drinking together, being a bit reckless because it was becoming clear he was either in for a long fight or a quick death. At some point, he suggested going to a strip club, and we immediately rallied and found sober people to drive us in 2 cars. When we got there, this wave of desperation hit me. I was drunk, and while I'd been with a few people during my first year of college, I had never actually gone all the way, and I was very anxious about it. The first stripper who approached me, I agreed to a private dance. It was a trashy all-nude place with no alcohol, and it basically had a reputation as a brothel. Half of our group had already disappeared into private rooms. The girl was pushy. I wasn't in the right state of mind to negotiate, and after watching my dying friend all night, I had this now or never attitude, justified or not. I offered her about $80 in cash, which was all I had. She asked if I also had a card. Stupidly and drunkenly, I handed over my debit card. She left, and apparently she and the bouncer ran it repeatedly. $50, $100, $200, $400. The card shut off after that, but she still made me come out and sign the $400 receipt on camera. Then she went through with it. Every 30 seconds, she asked if I was finished. A few minutes later, I was. I felt pretty dirty afterward. The following week, my bank kept calling to confirm the charges. I knew I was on camera signing the $400 slip, so I had no choice but to confirm. All in all, I paid over $500 for my first time. It was a severe lapse in judgment, mixed with the anxiety of watching my friends decline and thinking, that could be me tomorrow. I've never told a soul, because I'm still so embarrassed. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.